Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really interested in how this interview with Jodi Cohen is going to go. I didn't really have a lot of questions to ask her because I had a feeling that the two of us will just naturally have this lovely flow. And this afternoon, I was thinking about something called the parasympathetic side of our nervous system. And so, for some of you listening to that word, you may not know what it means, but it's absolutely important to understand that part of yourself for any kind of healing or for aging well, just for being happy. So, we're going to talk about that. But Jody's an expert in essential oils. So I'd like to welcome my friend Jodi Cohen, and we're going to be talking today about not just essential oils and the parasympathetic nervous system, but also her new book. So, Jodi, thank you for taking the time. I was just
Thank
going to
you.
ask you to do that. Would you hold up your book, please?
Yeah.
Essential oils to boost the brain and heal the body. It's very feminine cover, just like you. And really,
Yeah.
just like essential oils. I mean, when you think about essential oils, it's a very feminine side of ourselves. So can you just first of all just tell people who are you and how did you get into this? Did you have sort of a funny path that led you to essential oils? There's a lot of us that are excuse me, a lot of us that are doing things are doing them because we were sort of led to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I am the wounded healer. I kind of, necessity is the mother of invention. Um First of all, I'm Jodi Cohen. I'm the founder of Vibrant Blue Oils. I am the author of the best-selling Healing with Essential Oils, and then my new book, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. But I got into essential oils kind of at a rock bottom moment. My former husband was bipolar, and it became pretty clear that he might die on my watch. And my friends staged an intervention and encouraged me to move him to a residential treatment facility. And once I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him alive, it was like I finally crossed the finish line for, a 10-year marathon. And I was so exhausted. I could barely function. My kids were 5 and 7. I had a full time job. I was like the Uber volunteer, the great friend, the great daughter. And I could barely get out of bed. I would wake up with my kids in the morning, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, drive them to school, come home, crawl back into bed, and set the alarm for pickup. And I knew enough. I'd been practicing nutrition for about 3 years at that point and was taking all the right supplements, and nothing was helping. And I was getting more and more concerned. I am a slow methylator, and when I tried pharmaceutical drugs in the past, they just made me feel terrible. They never worked. So I knew that wasn't an option, but I didn't really know what to do. And I was very lucky that a friend that I'd actually helped, I'd hosted a big event for her. So she was planning to give me this big box of essential oils as a thank you gift anyway. And she showed up and said, you have been so high cortisol for so long, which we know triggers systemic inflammation. I bet your gut is so inflamed that nothing you're ingesting is actually getting properly digested, absorbed, and assimilated. But oils can be used, you can use them topically on the skin, you can smell them. This might help. And I thought, why not? Like, I need help. Something, this is not sustainable. I need to figure something out.
Did you
So I,
think that a little bottle of oil, there's one of your little oils right here. This one is circadian rhythm. I love
yeah,
this one. Well, you have really, really cool ones, cool names, great smells. But did you think that where you were, like after you've done all these things, taken supplements, ate right, that a little bottle could help you?
it that's a wonderful question. At the time, I was so desperate. I didn't even, I wasn't discerning. It was like, I'll try anything. Like, I can't, my kids need me. I'm a single mom suddenly. I can't lose my
Mhm.
job. I need to find a way. Like, this is not sustainable. So I was, I think, really open hearted. I think that's one of the weird things about, kind of your rock bottoms or really horrible
Mhm.
things,
Mhm.
it's so awful you can't stay there. So you're much more open-minded and motivated to try things to like, crawl your way out of it.
Too, I feel I've been there myself more than once, by the way. And, I feel like when you reach that place, you're completely spent. You don't know what to do. And you're putting out this vibration into the universe asking for help. So when
Yeah.
something comes your way, of course, you're going to give it a
Yeah.
try.
No, I 100% believe that. I feel very blessed, like maybe I liked lavender. I wouldn't have called myself an expert in oils. I probably was in the same space that you were, that I was like, I don't really get what they do. That's not really my thing. I'm glad other people like it, but it was very net neutral.
Mhm.
And when this box showed up in my house and my friend said that, I thought, well, I know how to muscle test. I know this is my adrenal glands. Like, why not? I was really surprised because normally I would find one remedy, maybe two. I got 5 oils and I kept retesting and thinking that can't be right. It needs to be one. And then it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute, they're liquid. I can like combine them, like a mixed drink or something.
Mhm.
So I was such a novice. I literally went in my kitchen and grabbed a shot glass and
Oh,
started
wow.
testing. I didn't know what I was doing, but I made my first formula. It made sense to me. I knew the adrenals were the most accessible on the low back, kind of a kidney reflex point. So that's where I applied it. And it was literally like my kidneys turned on, my adrenals turned on. I was like, oh, look, I'm making cortisol. I have
Just like that,
energy.
right
Yeah,
away,
it
just
was,
right
it was
away.
really, yeah, like, there's certain reflex points that it's literally like I call it a gear shift. You shift your
Mm.
biking up the hill in high gear and you're like, oh, this doesn't need to be this hard. You downshift and you're like, okay, I can do this now. And that was pretty much my experience. And
So I
so,
want to just add a little something here too, because as somebody who's actually at times accomplished things that are really not possible for little me to accomplish, you realize it's not you doing it. Like, I really am a believer that if you're open and if you're asking the right questions, information starts coming to you. You think, well, this is an idea I have, but you feel real motivated to actually do it. And then all of a sudden something comes out of it, and that something can end up helping many, many people. So it sounds to me like that's exactly how this all got started.
oh, I get downloads all the time. I don't even claim credit. You're absolutely right. It is a higher power that's kind of communicating to me. And I think maybe you're right. Like you're more receptive when you're, so down that
Mm-hmm.
why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so great. Well, a lot you're resonating with a lot of people, because just the way we live today and the time that we're in, that's we can't control the stress around us, most of us.
Yeah.
Very few people, only once in my entire life of working with many people, has anybody said to me when I asked them, no, I don't have that much stress in my life. Most
Oh.
people that have actually come to me always say, oh, yeah, I've been through this and I've been through that and I've been sick and I've never been well since then, or whatever. And everybody seems to be under stress. And now I worry about our children because they're growing up into a world where they're super sensitive to the stress around them, to their
Yeah.
parents, what their parents are feeling. So that's actually something I'd love for us to get into, is can we use them with children,
Oh
babies and
yeah.
all too. So let's get to
Well,
that.
I
But you want to
yeah.
say it first?
Well, I was going to say, kids, once they're 2 years old, I feel more comfortable with it because when they're
Mhm.
younger, they're so little and so sensitive. I do sometimes, I'll say you can put a drop of the circadian rhythm on a cotton ball and put it in the corner of the crib. But
Oh, interesting.
I just don't want to overwhelm their little systems. But what you said really resonated because one of the things before this rock bottom, when people would say, oh, I like you, I'm an overachiever because it kind of brings me validation, like if I'm doing something, I must be lovable. So I
Mhm.
was always
And
busy.
and it feels good to do something
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so people would say like, oh, you're so stressed. And I would think, but what, I'm not going to stop being a good mom to my children. I'm not going to stop being a good wife or a good daughter or a good friend or a good employee. Like, what can I give up? And I never could see kind of the way to change my external environment. But with oils, and this is actually an interesting story. I was an athlete my whole life and I loved yoga. And I
Mm.
always wondered, like, why do I feel so much better in Shavasana than at the beginning? Like, what is it about yoga that just makes me feel great?
Is
And
that
I,
is that the position at the very end where you're completely
yeah,
relaxing? Okay.
yeah. It's basically yoga activates your parasympathetic nervous system
Hmm.
through the breathing, through the postures. So for any listener that doesn't know, your autonomic nervous system controls your automatic functions. It's the operating system for the body. And it has different gears. When you think you're going to die and in danger, that's the fight or flight sympathetic gear, versus when the world is safe and you can relax. That's the rest, digest, repair, parasympathetic gear. And I was fascinated with, could I use oils to stimulate this state? And early on, I started noticing that reflex points worked better. Like oil research, they're really looking at how to get oils into the blood. So when you inhale things, the skin in the nasal passageway is thinner, so it gets into the capillaries faster. It also passes through the cribriform plate and gets into the brain. So that's known to be a fast way. When they were looking at topical application, they were like, oh, it only works topically. Like, you hurt your back, so you put a cream on your back. It helps your back, but it isn't necessarily helping your big toe. And so they kind of dismissed topical application because it wasn't getting into the bloodstream. But what I realized is you can use stimulatory oils. Like I like clove and lime because clove is super stimulatory. Lime has really small molecules, so it gets into the skin quickly. It's almost like an acupuncture needle. And you can use those in different places to kind of balance the organ systems and have a body wide effect. So, with with that in mind, I kept thinking, if I can activate my parasympathetic nervous system, my safety system, then it doesn't really matter, like my everything around me can feel stressful, but I can be that calm in the face of the storm. And so what was a big aha moment, there was actually a researcher out of New York named Kevin Tracy, who was doing kind of electrical implant devices kind of right behind the earlobe, on that bone, the mastoid bone, because that's where your vagus nerve is the most accessible to the surface. So if you're looking for a reflex point to affect it, that's a good one. There are two acupuncture points in that area. Um, and I realized, oh my goodness, this probe was getting approved by the FDA for migraines, depression, epilepsy. And I was like, wow, that seems to be the right point to try to stimulate parasympathetic. And at first I thought, oh, it's relaxing. It should be a relaxing oil like lavender or chamomile. But to your point about the downloads, then somehow I saw stimulatory and I thought, wait, like it was full download. Clove. Clove is your answer. But clove takes about 30 minutes to get through the skin. Lime, on the other hand, much faster. So what's cool about combining oils, it's kind of like, your friends that like maybe the one spouse is really brilliant and the other spouse is really kind, and they have kids and they have a brilliant, kind kid. When you combine them, you get the best of both. So
Hmm.
all of a sudden, boom, you're activating your vagus nerve, you're feeling parasympathetic, the car cuts you off in traffic, and it doesn't matter. You're good. The next day, if you're not parasympathetic, four-letter words might fly out of your mouth. But in that moment, the world is crazy around you and you still feel calm.
That's really important. So I want to back up a little bit and just talk a little bit about some words that you've been using. And I'm going to ask you as a favor to stop using parasympathetic and sympathetic, because personally myself, I feel it's probably there's a lot of other people like me. When I kept hearing about autonomic nervous system and
Oh,
parasympathetic and sympathetic, I had so much trouble remembering which one was which.
sorry,
But
sorry.
no, no, no,
Stressed and
no,
calm.
no. So could we, for everybody, for my sake at least, start using rest and digest instead of parasympathetic? And fight or flight for sympathetic, because
Perfect.
honestly,
Sorry.
those two terms, that's not your fault. This is medicine. They come up with the most complicated
Yeah.
terms. Like maybe they don't really want other people to understand medicine, but I've always tried to help people understand, these complicated terms so we can make use of them. So if you don't mind, for those of us
That's
that struggle with
actually,
the
no, that's really
words, I hate
good.
those
That's
words.
really good feedback. You want to get yourself out of fight or flight,
Mhm.
because when you're in fight or flight, um, certain survival aspects of your physiology are prioritized, and others are kind of down regulated.
Like digestion, trying to eat when
Yeah,
you're in a fight or flight mode. Everything shuts
yeah,
down. Everything
yeah,
takes a back burner.
yeah.
Hormones, everything, to getting out of that danger.
Yes, and even, your ability to connect with other people and concentrate. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. This is a good trick. When you're in fight or flight, your pupils, the black part of your eyes, get really big so that you can take in kind of the information you need to survive. But anything like if you're trying to have a meaningful conversation with someone and you see their pupils are really big, dilated, they can't hear you. They are so focused on survival
Mm-hmm.
that they can't even pick what they want for dinner. So
Yeah, the brain absolutely goes on. It just isn't going to function right anymore. And you become very spacey, very ADD. People would say dyslexic or whatever. The brain just isn't working because everything is about getting you out of that dangerous situation, which today is very, very often. But, I always hear about primitive man as if it was different. I mean, I think it was different, but I think survival was always hard for all of us, all of our ancestors, just being able to get food for your next meal or food to sustain yourself through a long winter. Uh, I don't think it's ever been really, really easy for that many people on the planet. So, but our stress today is different. And we have tools today, actually, that they certainly wouldn't have had during primitive times, I guess. This is one of them.
yeah,
So, but another thing, too, I'd like to help people have a little more clarity around cortisol. So what happens when you're running away from danger? Your cortisol shoots way up. That's a hormone, and and then with it goes your blood sugar to give you the energy into the cells to run away from the danger. So it's if it stays up all the time, it's the fast track to aging. Your hair will turn gray, your skin will sag, your brain will go, nothing will work right. Your digestion doesn't work right. So you're not absorbing nutrients. So cortisol is an essential hormone. I've heard Dr. Carrie Jones, who is a great speaker for Dutch, the great this hormone test where you're testing in saliva. If you can find a podcast that she does talking about the cortisol awakening response. Cortisol is critical in the morning, that it helps you wake up and it helps you get going. But it's when it's out of balance at the wrong times of the day, like at bedtime, that it's really, really a problem. So I'd like for people to have just a little bit of background knowledge if they're really not real knowledgeable about this topic. And you actually did a parasympathetic summit, and you invited me to be on it. And I remember getting the email from you, and I'm thinking, parasympathetic. Which one is that one? I mean, even after all these years, I have to stop and think twice to use those terms. But
yeah.
I've always been one since then. I've always kind of wondered, once the summit was over with, there's a fantastic summit. Anybody listening should go look it up because they can still purchase it. But what was your takeaway? Like after interviewing all these so-called experts, what did you finally sort of come away with where you said, this is the main point, the most help that came out of my doing the summit, because the summit's a lot of work, by the way, as you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's a wonderful question. It's funny, I actually compiled my 25 favorite tips as a free gift. It's a
Oh, cool.
boostthebrainbook.com/gift. because what I realized is, it's kind of like that ice cream store, Baskin Robbins. There's 30 flavors and not everyone likes the same flavor. So I think oils, applying oils behind the ear on the mastoid point, that's the easiest way for me to access parasympathetic. But for other people, it's a gratitude practice. It's thinking about something that you're grateful for and you feel better immediately.
That's
Um,
mine. I have to work
yeah,
on it. It is a practice, especially when
yeah.
you're upset and your brain's not working to remember, okay, but look at all the things I still am grateful for. It is a practice. But Jody, you also used it, you mentioned vagus nerve, that this is a connecting point. That's very important.
Yeah.
What's so important about the vagus nerve? What is the vagus nerve for people that don't know that?
The vagus nerve is really the information highway that connects the brain to the body and the body to the brain. So all of the messages like you're hungry, you're full, your immune system needs to turn on, it's time to detoxify, it's time to sleep. All of that is kind of traveling back and forth. And what happens sometimes is if there's like a minor infection, those messages don't get through as quickly. Like think of, a traffic accident that maybe blocks both lanes. All of a sudden, the traffic doesn't move as quickly. So the more you can do things that kind of turn it on, and that can be deep breathing, it can be gargling or using a tongue depressor, it can be laughing, it can be singing or chanting. All of these things, it's a very long nerve. It touches most of your organs, your lungs, your heart, your stomach, your gallbladder, your pancreas, your intestines. So the more you kind of use it, the more it actually helps you turn on your rest and digest state. So that's why those deep breathing practices activate it, you know, laughing with people, smiling, even making eye contact. All of these kind of heart connection things help to make you feel safe and make you feel like you can rest and digest, and there's not some kind of emergency that you need to focus on and, that can feel like a threat or overwhelming.
Well, Jody, it's almost spring. I'm in Charleston, and there's lots of sign that springs are coming. And this is actually the time of the year when the body naturally starts detoxifying. Actually, toward the end of February, so we're in already a detox time. Our bodies are programmed to live by the sun, and by the seasons. So here we are in detox time. So my question is, how can you use essential oils for supporting detoxification and drainage?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think drainage, I mean, I know you talk about it, but it's one of those things that people don't think about. They think, oh, we're gonna, eat a clean diet and the cells will let go of the toxins, but they don't necessarily think of how are we going to shepherd the toxins out of the body.
Right.
So if this is too complicated, break it down with me. But the toxins go from the cell to the lymph to the blood to the liver to the gallbladder to the gut to the toilet. I mean, any step along that process, if there's kind of a bottleneck or congestion or stagnation, it doesn't flow as smoothly and it
And
can,
there always will be. It's just
yes,
for lots of reasons. When cortisol is high, as we age and there's more DNA damage, uh, many reasons. I think if you look at the genes, which is one of my favorite things to do, there are quite a few genes in the body that are indicating the person doesn't detoxify very well. Then
exactly.
people will have gut problems that, they're constipated all their life, maybe, so they're not eliminating. Even if they are eliminating, there's plenty of like people with diarrhea, for example, they think, well, I'm eliminating, but diarrhea is actually a form of constipation. And so the cells, if they get a signal that those toxins aren't leaving, they end up keeping them. And
Yes.
so then they die. Basically, they're poisoned. Basically, the DNA inside the cell, the mitochondria inside the cell, they the cell dies. So this is a really important topic. I really would like to go more, but do you mind going through that pathway again? So the cell's holding onto a toxin. The toxin comes out into the bloodstream. It gets carried to the liver. The liver puts it into the makes bile and processes those toxins, but ultimately wants to get rid of them, obviously. So it puts them in the bile. The gallbladder holds on to them for a little while until you eat. The bile drops into the small intestine, mixes with the fats, and stimulates peristaltic movement. And then that food or those toxins go to from the small intestine to the large intestine and are supposed to leave in 12, 18 hours, maybe 18 at the most, and they don't. So
Exactly.
we really do have to assist our body in detoxing. So, this really surprised me when you told me that you could use oils to help with detoxification. So how do you do that?
Well,
And which
first,
oils?
yeah. So one of the biggest problems our lymphatic system, which carries the toxins from the cells to the blood, it doesn't move by itself. That's why movement, walking, any kind of exercise
Bouncing.
helps. Yeah,
Bouncing is
bouncing,
really, really good.
dry brushing, oils, especially mint oils, or if you combine, the lymph is kind of a one-way street and it's supposed to flow, when it's leaving the body downward. So you can combine a mint with like a rooted oil like vetiver, so it pulls it down. That's one way to help. The liver, as you pointed out, your genes. If your phase one detoxification is really good, but your SNPs complicate phase two, there are oils that can kind of help optimize phase two movement so that things actually process through the liver. The gallbladder, the bile can get really viscous, and that can be a really stuck point. You can use oils like black cumin or Roman chamomile that can help both kind of give the gallbladder more vitality, but also help thin the bile. Bowel
Can
movements.
I was going to say, can you use them topically, or are you talking
I
about take?
I like topically because I think that's more efficient. I
Because
like
black
topic.
cumin, people are taking it internally too. It is
Yeah,
very, very high in oxalates for people that don't know that and are oxalate sensitive. I just want to throw that out there.
yeah.
But it's got amazing, all the great things it does. It's amazing. So I just wondered if you could actually put it on your skin and bypass the digestion. So
That's what I
it
do.
might be good.
And I use, for acupuncture, there's so many amazing gallbladder points. Like that's really an easy one because the gallbladder channel, you can put it right over the gallbladder. You can use gallbladder points kind of on your feet. That's one thing I share a lot of in the book. So there are lots of ways that you can avoid digestion, especially if you have any sensitivities, and still get the benefit of the plant.
So in the book, you're going into, especially the first book, you're covering the acupuncture points for each of the organ systems, and
I show them on the bottom of the feed, and then on my website, I kind of get into more like for digestion, for focus, for detox. I feel like acupuncture points are a good workaround,
mhm,
especially for, you mentioned in the beginning when you're really sensitive. The more sensitive you are, the more gentle I try to be.
mhm. That's a lot of people, by the way, today. Well, what
Yeah.
about, okay, so we touched on detox and drainage, stimulating the toxins to leave.
Yeah.
But what about sleep? That's the other huge, huge problem. And I have obviously, I believe diet's important. Spent my whole
Yeah.
life studying food and helping people be on diets that work for them. But honestly, I think that managing stress, um, calming down the nervous system so you're calm, and getting a good night's sleep, which you can't do unless you calm the stress down and the chatter in your mind, those supersede diet. And one of our seven principles, well, in Body Ecology, it's based on seven principles, but one of them is step by step. And so, where do you begin when you're trying to get well? Well, the first thing is you've actually got to create energy. And
Yeah.
obviously, food is going to help you
Yeah.
create energy, but it's also managing the erratic energy that you have,
Yeah.
the high levels of cortisol. So we talked about that. That's really important to put that into play. And then you want to also correct digestion. You want to conquer infections in your body and the inflammation that they bring, and you want to cleanse out the toxins. So we touched a little bit on cleansing out the toxins, but and the stress part. But what about sleep, so that you can really repair yourself? I mean, sleep is how the body uh, cleanses and repairs itself, basically.
Yeah. Well, I loved that you gave that wonderful explanation of cortisol early on. So the sleep hormone is melatonin, and that works in tandem with the stress hormone cortisol. Ideally your energy, your stress hormone cortisol is high in the morning, and then as the day tapers on, it gets lower. And that allows melatonin to they work in tandem like a teeter-totter. You know, if you're high in cortisol, melatonin's low. If you're high in melatonin, cortisol's low. And it's the pineal gland right in the middle of the brain that releases the sleep hormone melatonin in response to darkness. And so oils can help the pineal gland both sometimes the fluoride in the water, the aluminum and the glyphosate in the air, it can um, almost pollute the pineal gland. It's called pineal calcification. So oils can be used to help break up that stagnation, unravel the problem, help to naturally release melatonin, which then forces cortisol levels down so that you're able to fall asleep.
One of the oils is called circadian rhythm,
Yeah.
and the instructions are to put it on your ear and the
Above your ear. The skin above your ear is really, really thin, and
Mhm.
that's level. So not on your ear. If you kind of trace up above your ear, just right there.
Okay, but definitely below. You can't just dab it on your hair. You got to go
Yeah.
down to the
Yeah.
scalp.
Yeah.
And then how about another spot you said is the top of the head?
Yes.
Same thing. You've got to like part the hair and get right down to the scalp and put it on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love smelling it. It smells great. It could be a perfume.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
it just smells so clean and fresh and everything. So that's what this one is, circadian rhythm. But I also have adrenal, I have lymph, and I have parasympathetic, which we will call rest and digest. But
Yeah.
anyway, so how did you come up with these formulas? Like, was it kind of just a download, or did you also just
Yeah. It was
studying or
it was it
testing?
well, it's a combination. So I get a direct download, and then I go and reverse engineer and research. Like, that's weird. Why would that one work? And it always makes sense. And then it's kind of tweaking the formula. It's like for anyone who cooks, you find the recipe, a friend gives it to you, but then you kind of customize it. Maybe you add some additional spices.
Mhm.
So I would tweak it. And I have kind of my own little coterie of practitioners that I have test things for me and help refine. They can also muscle test and kind of drill down. Oh, do we need more sandalwood? More
Mhm.
wintergreen. So I'm constantly refining things. But that's how I do it.
I've seen charts where people, certain oils are recommended for your astrology chart.
Oh,
I think,
interesting.
yeah, you probably haven't, it's probably not right, but I think so I'm a December Sagittarius, but I'm supposed to be sandalwood, and I don't like sandalwood. So,
You know why that probably is because you're fire. And so they're
Mhm.
probably trying to ground you with earth.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it could be probably any, like
Mhm.
spruce is a really good one, cedar wood, any kind of grounding woody plant.
Mhm. And if people are sensitive to, say, pine,
Yeah.
uh, what if they, and somehow they're eating it, like pine nut oil or pine seed extract or something, and they react to that? Do they usually also react if you put it on your skin, or do you think that's just taking it internally?
I think I have found so much of a variety. It's not a one size fits all that I just say if you have any concern, just don't use it. We can find a different way to replace it. Because
Mm.
why tempt fate?
Well, so gosh, I guess the last question, because I could ask you a million questions. Now that I'm finally into essential oils, I have a million questions. But couple of things. First of all, there's perfume, which people really were into for a long time. I, and like many, many people, get sick, would go into through the
Yeah.
department store where the perfume was, and literally my eyes would, I just felt bad basically. So I've always stayed away from perfumes, but that's why essential oils I thought were kind of a wonderful substitute. Are they? And is there a way to wear them where they can last longer? Because perfumes last a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It depends where you put them. I mean, the pulse points, like the wrists and behind the ears where people apply perfume,
Mm-hmm.
that tends to get into the skin more quickly. You can put it, some people put it kind of on a cotton ball and put it either in their bra or in a pocket. So
Mm-hmm.
it diffuses out. If you wanted to kind of make it into a spray, oil and water doesn't mix. So you would use like witch hazel or vodka or high grain alcohol and you can spray it and that lasts longer. You can use that for
Mm-hmm.
linen sprays too.
Oh, great. That sounds good. And then my last question, I promise, is quality. Like there's a lot of companies out there selling these essential oils, and I don't know which one to buy, so often won't buy any of them.
Yeah.
And then when I met you and began using them and smelled how fresh and clean and pure and real they seemed, then I wouldn't just go in a store and buy them. So what does a person look for when they're buying them and starting to collect them?
Yeah, I think, fear-based marketing, I think, is paralyzing. So, what I say is if you can find it organic, buy organic because they're the concentrated essences of plants. And if they're concentrating pesticides, you don't necessarily want that. But after that, trust your sense of smell. I've heard people say like, "Oh, if it smells awful, you need it." I'm like, "No, would you ever eat anything that smelled awful? Trust
Mm,
your intuition." I often find I crave a hamburger when I need iron. I crave chocolate when I need magnesium. When
mm,
orange smells good to me, just trust yourself. And really, I have the same response in the mall with the candle stores with kind of the fake fragrance. I think most people can tell so I
mm,
wouldn't be so worried. Organic is ideal. All of our oils are organic, but if you can't find that, just, trust your nose.
mm. Well, but people can order them from you, and,
Yeah.
and that is a trusted source. You said something I think it's really kind of important too that I wanted to point out and leave people with this thought is that for people that are super sensitive to the environment, um, and as they get healthier and you start to eliminate all the junk and clean up the world around you, our bodies become very sensitive and they talk to us. So a lot of times, let's say you eat something and then your nose runs a little bit, you think that's my body saying that wasn't the best food for me, at least right now, not at this time. So I like what you just said, and I'd like for people to really think about that and practice that. Is get quiet and still and listen to how your body actually speaks to you, because there is such a thing as body talk. So the cleaner you get, the more sensitive you become, and yet the better your intuition comes. And then you also, I absolutely positive, start to draw in the solutions you need for getting well. And that's exactly what happened to you. Going back to the very beginning of our talk here,
Yeah.
you were kind of you were empty and still didn't know where to go next. And that's when the answers came. So that's a really good
Yeah.
thought. And
It's
that's really
it's
the,
surrender.
yeah.
You're like, I'm stuck, help. Ask for help and be
Mhm.
open to what you hear.
And somehow in saying all that, it feels like oils, essential oils, they're in that same category, like high vibration, they're really special. So thank you very much for educating us with the books. I
Thank
hope
you.
they're great books. They're really well organized and very good for somebody who is new to this. So I highly recommend it, and thank you for the effort you've done all the way around from the summit to the books you've written. Thank you for your work.
Oh, and thank you. You're amazing and brilliant. I thank you for your time.
Oh, love doing it. And I hope this message gets out to a lot of people. I'd like to ask everyone listening if you know somebody that will be helped by what you heard, like anxiety, depression, sleep problems, just being able to calm the stress down in their life, and even babies after the age of 3 or so. You know, teach them, buy the book and buy an oil along with it too. So, Jody, how do people find you?
Well, they can buy Boost the Brain or essential oils to boost the brain and heal the body anywhere books are sold. And my website is vibrantblueoils.com. And we
Great.
answer all emails if you want to email us at info@vibrantblueoils.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.